Welcome to the 39th lesson of SmartKnitter, Knit Instructions Level 2. In this lesson, we will talk about the techniques to insert courses for editing. Translate the first example with polo neck opening. Upon translation, we can see that there is prompt warning collision of feeder 7. The system will jump to the problematic course. Press F12 to return to the corresponding course in SmartGraph. We reach the section with neck bottom cast off. There are knitting actions next to the neck bottom cast off section, which is not correct. The neck bottom cast off section need to be knitted independently. Circle the neck bottom cast off section, and we can see there are 10 courses. Insert 10 rows. Move the cast off section down to the newly added rows. Translate again, and we can see the panel is now knitted correctly. Let's look at the second example with bird's eye jacquard. Translate the original file, and we can see that there is no proper cast-on row at the transition from sweep to body. Back to SmartGraph. As this is a hollow panel design, the system cannot detect the first row of body. We need to add the transition row manually. Insert 2 empty rows. Draw the interlock structure and fill in the entire section. Assign a distinct tension number and zone to the setup section. Translate again and select No Action for jacquard cast-on to prevent clashing instructions. Now the jacquard is set up properly upon retranslation. Let's look at example 3 with jacquard pattern. In feeder setup, we set the neck bottom cast off section to use feeder 3, but upon translation, that section is knitting with feeder 5 instead. Use the Select tool to confirm the row count for this cast-off section, which is 10 rows. We have to add an extra row this time around. Insert 11 rows below it. Copy the cast-off section down. Clear out the original section. Move the section of knit row underneath the cast-off section to the extra empty row added. This is to make sure the feeder direction is correct. Translate again, and now section is knitted with the correct feeder. Let's look at another example, which is a bell sleeve with 1 by 1/2 cardigan structure. This sleeve has different length for the front and back sleeve opening. In the knit specification, you can only define the shape and size of the sleeve opening, but manual editing is necessary for partial knitting. First, select the pattern repeat for half cardigan stitch and add to the image cache list. Then select the entire panel and change it into front stitch. Creating the correct partial knit sections first, then fill in the pattern could help make sure the pattern is filled correctly without staggering. Add in the entry revolution for the left side in the beginning. Select the partial knit section to check the row count. It measures 34 rows. Insert 34 rows to after the entry revolution. Select the left partial knit section and move it down to the empty space. Move the right section down a row to correct the feeder direction. Extend the last row to the rightmost stitch. Remove the extra rows to combine the extended row to the right partial knit section. Click on the structure repeat and set the pattern fill parameters. Make sure you check the fill color and fill structure. Click on the panel to fill the structure. Check again to make sure the pattern is repeated correctly. Translate, and we can see the knitting sequence is now correct. Let's look at another sleeve panel with a hollowed-out middle section. We want to knit the sleeve panel with a single feeder. Upon translation, we can see that the knit structure is not translated correctly. The transitional row is not knitted in the right structure. Back to SmartGraph, we need to add 1 revolution of single jersey for the transition from sweep to body. Translate again, and we can see it is knitted correctly. Another method is to manually separate the two sections. First, insert number of empty rows that matches the hollow section. Move the left partial knit section to the newly added rows. Add an extra row to guide the feeder to the right. Move the right section up a row to make sure the knitting direction is correct. Remove the extra bit on the left. Toggle to zone mode. We can change the entire body section to zone 1. Translate again. We can see that without the entry revolution, the left partial knit section need to perform transfer before knitting in every revolution. This would be quite time-consuming. We can convert the back stitch on the last row of sweep to knit back stitch and transfer to front symbol instead. Translate again. Now all the stitches are transferred to front after knitting the sweep. This would save some knitting time. Let's look at a panel with 2 color bird's eye jacquard. Upon translation, we can see the jacquard knitting sequence is incorrect. The same knitting movements are duplicated in the partial knitting rows. To correct that, simply add an empty row after the partial knitting section. This is to make sure the feeders return to the correct position after partial knitting. Translate again, and we can see now the knitting actions are translated correctly. This marks the end of this tutorial. Thank you for watching.